CBC kids, it is Sir Knight Josh here, and we are going to continue our series on the armor of God. Now, we haven't talked in the last couple weeks with Christmas and New Year's and everything, and I hope you had a great time with your family. But hey, we're going into a new year, and we need to put on the full armor of God to be prepared for any kind of attacks or obstacles that come our way this year. So today we're going to talk about a piece of the armor that it talks about in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 14. And that is the breastplate of righteousness. It says to make sure you have the breastplate of righteousness in place before you prepare for battle. Now, I want to ask you a question. I'm going to give you a few seconds to answer it. Maybe talk about it as a family real quick. Pause the video if you need to talk about this. Where do we get our righteousness from? Righteousness is goodness, and it's being upstanding and upright before God. Okay, where do we get our righteousness from? Go ahead, I'm going to give you a few more seconds to answer that. Where do we get our righteousness from? We as Christians get our righteousness from Christ. Okay, the Bible tells us in 2 Corinthians chapter 5:21, it says, "He became sin who knew no sin, so that we could become the righteousness of God." And what that's saying is Jesus Christ, who was perfect and righteous like we couldn't be, he lived a perfect life and he died the death that we deserve to die. So he took on our sin and became our sin and gifted us his righteousness. Okay, that means if you are a child of God, if you are a born-again Christian, when God sees you, he sees the righteousness of his son, Jesus, because he took on our sin and transferred us his righteousness. He gifted it to us. He swapped it for us. So if you are a child of God, you have the righteousness of Christ. Now, our breastplate was something that a Roman soldier would have worn to cover up his upper body, his torso, his heart, and all of his important internal organs and things like that. So it was really important to make sure no kind of weapons or arrows or swords could get to those vital organs. Now we need to put on the breastplate of righteousness that covers us and protects us, because Christ gifted us his righteousness to cover us himself. That's what's so important to know about righteousness. It doesn't come from you. It doesn't come from within ourselves. Oh, for years and years and years and centuries, if you read through the Bible and you read through the Old Testament, you'll see that the Israelites were constantly trying to find righteousness and goodness within themselves. They were constantly trying to be good enough to earn God's favor and his love and to be in relationship with him. But again and again and again, they would turn to sin and fail. So we need something more sturdy and more strong to cover us than our own righteousness, because it will fail every time. It will break at the weakest of attacks. But Jesus is saying, here, I'm going to be good enough. I'm going to be righteous, and I'm going to gift that over to you to protect you and to cover you in your time of need. Hey, your righteousness comes from Jesus Christ. He gifted it to you after he took your sin upon himself on the cross. And in his finished work, he gifted his righteousness to us, and we have that to cover us and to cover our hearts and our souls against any attack that may come our way. Dwell on these passages as a family. Talk about them more. Continue to read over and over and over again about equipping yourselves with the full armor of God. We've talked about the belt of truth, and now we have talked about making sure the breastplate of righteousness is in place. And that righteousness comes from Jesus Christ and Jesus Christ alone. Hey, we love you guys so much, and we will see you next week as we continue our series on the full armor of God. We love you.